You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, not joined this evening by your co-host, Tim Hamilton, but that's okay. We're going to keep it going anyway. We are diehard Packers fans that love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and all the nonsense. We're sticking in with real football, talking about the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down the games during the season and sorting through all the drama of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all those socials and subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things help us out quite a bit. Don't take you very long at all. They are free. So thank you to all of the subscribers and listeners. We really appreciate y'all. We're going to have some fun tonight. Overreactions, underreactions, all reactions to the Vikings games. I've even got Tim's notes, so don't worry. He is going to be well represented here tonight. And we're going to, we're 4 games in here. We got a sample size. We're going to talk about, are we concerned? Should we be concerned? Where are we at here 4 games into the season? And then, of course, how will the Packers rebound against the Rams next week? But first, we got to get started with a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. Y'all can find them on the web at ticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, please go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. All right, let's get into it. It was an ugly game against the Vikings. There's no two ways about that. But there's silver linings. There are things to take. There are no moral victories. I'm not about moral victories, but there are observations, we'll call them, that can be taken from this game, and I think are good signs of what is to come in the future. So we'll get into some of that. Would love to see what you guys think this evening. Chris in jumping in with us. Good to see you, sir. Appreciate you. You're gonna need some help from the chat this evening. You guys throw in your predictions about the Rams game and keep me honest. Sometimes Tim's got to keep me in check. I can get a little bit, maybe emotional or a little bit overreacting. So y'all got to keep me honest tonight, but we're going to have some fun. And this is an interesting one, though, the Vikings game. As I was watching this, there's sometimes that games are, the Packers are not playing well, but the game is still watchable. This first half and really like the first 60%, because even into the third quarter was just like unwatchable, man. It was tough. Mistakes, a lot of mistakes, definitely some bad calls by the refs, some things that just plays that aren't made, and there's just a lot left out there to go, gosh, if you do this, how does the game look? If McDuffie gets that interception, how does the game look? If you're able to, force them to a field goal there instead of giving them a big touchdown to get the game kicked off, how does the game look? So there's just a lot that comes to mind from this Vikings game when we start unpacking it like that. But what stands out to me the most about this game is how they finished. And you don't need to look too far to find a comparison to show you at least how meaningful it was, right? So the week before, week 3, the Vikings play the Texans, and that was actually a closer game at halftime. It was, I believe it was a 2-score game at halftime. And the Vikings really beat up on them in the second half. Whereas, with this game, the Packers didn't roll over. They definitely didn't do themselves a lot of favors until later on in the game. But, man, they fought it out. They didn't quit. And that's something that we talked about on this podcast a lot last season. And I've even brought it up a little bit, this season already. But they did not quit. And that is such an awesome characteristic to have as a team. A lot of reasons for them to quit in that game. There's a lot of people on Twitter, myself included, shouting for the Packers to pull Jordan Love there. I think it was in the second quarter, man. He started taking shots and he was limping around. Just didn't didn't look good, and it's just like, hey, cut your losses and salvage the rest of the season. Let's not let Jordan Love get hurt even more. He hung in there. You got to respect the heck out of that, and true Packers quarterback fashion, right? I mean, you got to be a tough dude to play quarterback for the Packers. There's no way around that. So, not that this is the equivalent of him, playing a season with a broken thumb or doing what Rodgers did against the Bears when he got all doped up, but he hung in there. He took some shots. You got to know that knee didn't feel good. And that knee is definitely part of his throwing operation there, the throwing mechanics. Y'all probably heard some of that broken down on the broadcast. I thought they were overplaying it a little bit because there were definitely some throws that were good. They were on the money, and they were trying to make it sound like they weren't good because of that. So didn't like that. But all around, it's hard to lose sight of them fighting back and damn near winning that game. And honestly, the fact that it was a 2-point game and you missed 2 kicks in the game. We'll get to the kicker. I get it, but you missed 2 kicks in the game. I mean, you had every chance to win that game. As ugly as it started, having every chance to win that game is just. That's a big deal, man. It really is. It's not a moral victory. You don't get to say, "Oh well, I guess you do get to say we'll get them next time because we see the Vikings in December." But it's tough. You never want to lose a division game. You don't want to lose a conference game. There's playoff implications throughout. So yeah, not a good thing to lose this game, but there's definitely some silver linings that came out of it. And these guys being able to fight back against adversity they were shorthanded too, right? You got injuries. You're without your best cornerback, 2 of your top 3 cornerbacks, and Jair and Carrington Valentine, going against the best receiver in the league right now. I think Justin Jefferson is pretty easily the best receiver in the league. Tyreek Hill, I'll hear it. He's pretty damn good too. There's a lot of arguments to be made, but I don't think anybody can be mad about me saying that about Justin Jefferson. He's an absolute freak. And, Addison's not bad either, and the rest of those guys aren't scrubs. So, that's already a tough task, and credit to LaFleur. He said that we don't use that as excuses or anything like that, and that's fine. That's true. You can't, right? Even if injuries happen in the game, you got to roll with them. But as fans, when we're over here trying to figure out how to set our expectations, for the future and for just the coming weeks, you got to factor these things into it, right? You've got to look at it and go, all right, they lost, but how did they lose? And it's a lot of shades of early last season too, right? And you still are, I believe, the youngest team in the league. If not, you're one of them. And it's, that's a big factor. Young dudes make mistakes. It happens. It's going to happen. New system on the defense. We knew that was going to take some kind of working into. Guys are getting comfortable. Guys are figuring it out. I think even the coaches each week are learning something about how guys can fit in different places and contribute in different ways. So you've got to have patience for that. Which I got to make sure I'm running my banners here. But overall, when they took that set of circumstances and then you go 28-7 at halftime, almost 28-0, they saved that. And to come back from that's a big deal. It is a big deal to come back from all of that. So not to be overlooked, right? Still a loss, still sucks. But one thing I did want to just at least draw a comparison to is the early Mahomes Chiefs. They got down early a lot, and they had some epic comebacks as part of their saga. Now, I'm not saying that Love will be Mahomes. I'm not saying the Packers are about to be Chiefs-like dynasty. That'd be awesome. It'd be real cool, but it's hard to predict that kind of stuff. So just something to keep in mind, right? Like these guys are still really young core, and good, talented teams when they're young can do stuff like that makes them get behind. And the fact that they've not only got the wherewithal, but the talent also to mount a comeback like they did, it's a good sign. It's a really good sign. So don't forget those things. I do think that the next matchup against the Vikings will look different. It's kind of funny how that seems to be a pattern lately. You look like one team against them, the first game, and a totally different team the second game. But I do. And, it'll be the end of December. A lot's going to happen between now and then. This Packers team is going to grow. There's just going to be a lot of things that happen. So and the Vikings look like a good team. Let's not take any credit away from that. The title of the episode is they are not who we thought they were. And I'll throw my hand up and admit first that I thought the Vikings were going to be a dumpster fire this year. They had a really bad string of luck there, going through kind of the end of the offseason training camp timing, and they're losing players and just terrible, terrible fortunes. So it really didn't look like they were going to be able to come into the season very well. And, their quarterback, there wasn't a lot of faith in Darnold, and they look like a great team, man. You got to give credit to that defense. And I know a lot of folks are already talking about the disguised coverages and how well they do that. And Brian Flores had a chance to be a head coach for a reason, and he was a great defensive coordinator before. Guy's a great coach. So credit where credit is due. That's a tough team, and that's going to be that's going to be something we got to watch for, when trying to win the division, trying to win a playoff spot. The Vikings, they're going to be right there. So fortunately, again, there was some not great circumstances for the Packers in this one. They were probably swinging with a little bit of a weighted bat. So if you can get that together and get healthy, you're definitely going to be, a little bit more in sync with everything by December. That's a different game, a totally different game. So I wouldn't overreact on this. This is not panic button time. I was ready for the panic button. I'll tell you what, at the end of the first half in that game, I was definitely ready for the panic button. But we don't need the panic button right now, guys. We do not need it. This team is still young and talented. They're still getting warmed up in this season. So hang in there and just have some patience. I got to put that banner up. I think that's really the key. Just patience. Just patience. I'm gonna pull the Rodgers thing here. I think that's really what it's going to take. And some of you might be thinking about the kicker. We're not talking about patience with the kicker. We'll get there. But I'm just talking about patience with the team, the defense, the offense. There's a lot of good signs, but these guys are learning every week. And just the same, they're getting another game of film on their opponent every week. So this week you've got 4 weeks of film on your opponent as opposed to 3. And there's a lot of data in that you can use to help you game plan, to help you understand what's coming at you. And they've got a formidable, or I shouldn't say a formidable, maybe a lesser opponent this week against the Rams after losing to the Bears this last week. So we'll get there. We're not going to jump ahead. But I would say patience, just hang in there. It's ugly, but they're showing you that they've got the signs. And so one of our friends, Matthew Tan, good to see you, buddy. Glad you're here with us this evening. Am excited for the upcoming. Yeah, that's right. Matthew's headed to the Rams game. You gotta represent, man. Make sure you got that green and gold out there. Make sure you're getting loud for the defense, man. Is Tim okay? Yes, Tim is okay. He was traveling, just had some travel snares and couldn't get home in time to get set up for a podcast this evening. So he is okay. Hopefully we'll even be listening in before the pod's done. But wish you all the best, Tim. We'll catch you next week, sir. And then Matthew got my pack prediction. Jordan Love is going to exploit the Rams defense and score 3 touchdowns. All right. After 4 this week, and that's one thing. Like, we got to look at this as a holistic thing, right? Like Jordan Love's performance, 4 touchdowns, man. That's fun, and he walked in wearing the number 4. So there was, of course, some interceptions to go along with that. In true number 4 fashion, right? But ode to number 4 in that game. 4 touchdowns, threw some interceptions to go with it, like number 4 would. But also almost threw for 400 yards. I mean, there were some good things that started coming together out of that one. You got to really factor those things in. All in all, let's take a look real quick at the PFF grades from the game. Now, again, we do not hold PFF as gospel. It is just a nice objective measure we can look at and talk about and try to understand who played well, maybe who didn't. And then there's some times where we got to call PFF out and just tell them that they're wrong. We do that too. So for your offensive grades from this game, PFF had Josh Jacobs as your top graded player, Elton Jenkins as number 2, Dobbs number 3, Wicks number 4 and Malik Willis coming in at number 5. Are we what is this? Is this like through week 4? Oh, no, sorry guys. That was week 2. Excuse me. On to week 4. Here we are on the right week. Scratch that. Okay. Week 4 against the Vikings. Your top graded offensive player was Zach Tom. Actually had an elite grade of 89. That's a really good one right there. And a lot of that came in the run blocking category with a 92.7. So top graded offensive player, Zach Tom. Next one up, Jaden Reed had an exceptional game, no doubt about it. Rasheed Walker, Emmanuel Wilson coming at number 4, and Jordan Love coming in at number 5. So, and then, you go down the list, get down to our bottom 5 players on the offense from this game. Romeo Dobbs, 5th from the bottom with a 55. Christian Watson also down there with a 55. Tucker Kraft, 55. Elgin Jenkins, 55. And Luke Musgrave with a 49. That's rough. I don't know. We'd have to go back. I don't know that Dobbs deserves that. Maybe, getting the drops and the tip pass. We'd have to go back and look at Jenkins too. He had the penalty, but all in all, take the PFF grades with a grain of salt. Not always what they're cracked up to be. And Elgton Jenkins did have a very good pass blocking grade. It appears his run blocking grade is what brought him down. So anyway, that is from the offense against the Vikings in this game. That was their grades. The defense, how they graded out against the Vikings. Your top graded players should not be a surprise. Xavier McKinney coming in with a 91, elite. Evan Williams at number 2, coming in with an 81, also a very good grade. Looks like he only had 10 total snaps, so small sample size. Still nice to see he has a good grade though. And nice to see this name towards the top of the list. And I don't think this is a fluke or a misgrade, but Quay Walker at number 3. I thought he did have a good game. Obviously got the sack, but he was flying around out there. Number 4, Isaiah McDuffie. Definitely would have loved to see him come up with that interception. Probably would have really boosted that grade. And then Kenny Clark coming in at number 5. Again, it's good to see him towards the top of the list because he has spent some time at the bottom. Not good. We don't want to see that. So nice to see Kenny towards the top there, 5th graded defensive player. Now at the bottom, your 5th player from the bottom is none other than Eric Wilson, who has actually been playing well lately. So this is a little bit of a flip-flop for him. Edgerrin Cooper, 4th from the bottom. Devontae Wyatt, 3rd. Kingsley Enagbari, 2nd. And TJ Slayton, your lowest graded player with a very bad 34. Ouch. It's pretty low. It's pretty bad. Kingsley Enagbari with a 39. Those are really, really bad grades. I have to go back and watch those guys individually to see if they were actually that bad. I don't know if they were that bad. Maybe they could have been. But again, take the PFF grades with a grain of salt. It's just kind of fun to look and see what things look like. But overall, there are some good things to take out of that game, and it's tough because of how frustrating it is in that first half. But it's a long season. There's a lot of football left to play. And there's a lot of time and ability for these guys to correct. Don't forget how far into this thing they got last year before they turned it around. And they got plenty of time still ahead. So do not panic. But here we are. We have a game here in front of us. We are 4 games now into the season. Are we concerned? My answer is no, do not panic. But what are we concerned about? We're concerned about something. We're not just sitting here with zero concerns. I know what the top thing on everybody's mind is, and we'll get to it. But yeah, 4 games into the season, you've got a better sample size. You got some data. You've seen some good teams, maybe some not as good teams. How you feeling about it? I to be honest, I kind of think this is where they would have been. Like, this is what I was kind of predicting, and if you guys were listening before, Tim and I were talking about it. When you got a new defensive system, my expectation was these guys were going to need about 8 weeks to really get in a groove, right? And really, show that they know what they're doing out there and be comfortable in the system and really just kind of playing sound football. So, we're 4 weeks into it, and I think the most exciting thing to see is that they're leading the league in turnovers. I mean, that's gosh, that's got to be one of the biggest defensive stats that you could focus on and be leading the league in. Turning the ball over has such a big bearing on the outcome of the game. To be leading that in the league at this point in the season, I think is a great sign for Hafley's defense and just the mentality that they're playing with. Because you certainly see that there have been mistakes made. They've given up plays. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the bend don't break thing is a big deal. When these guys are out there thinking about making turnovers, a lot of times that's the difference. And we saw it. We were on the wrong end of it whenever Tucker Kraft, I think it was, got the forced fumble on him. I think it was Murphy, number 7. If I'm wrong, hold me accountable. But anyway, one of the Vikings DBs just punched that ball out. I mean, you could see him. He almost like had his fists up and he just straight up punched that ball right out. You have to have the mind to do that. You have to have the mind to sit there and think, I'm going to do that instead of just going in for a tackle. And not a lot of players do. So, the fact that the Packers all seem to be in that mode, and they are, right? I mean, you can see them swatting at the ball. You certainly see him getting some turnovers. Xavier McKinney getting his 4th interception in 4 games. So they have a mind for it, the nose for it, and I think that's a really big deal because when you tweak the mistakes and you get these guys playing a little bit more sound within the system, magic starts to happen. You know what I mean? Like you really start to figure things out, and it can seem like it happens overnight, but it's really just sort of fixing one mistake at a time and slowly reducing those down to a minimum. So, I'm on the optimistic side of things. I'm very excited about where they're at and, the adversity that they've fought through so far in the season. That's going to pay off for them. The ability to face adversity, stand up in that, I mean, even in a game like this against the Vikings, but just the season in general. Jordan Love goes down early. These guys rally around Malik Willis. Now Jordan Love's back, and they're rallying back around him, and you can tell that these guys just don't have any quit in them. So that's that carrying over from last year. That's a big win, great sign. You may not be undefeated, firing on all cylinders, but at this point in the season, you're not really supposed to be. You go off firing on all cylinders too soon, you burn out before you need to. You saw the Eagles do that last year. They looked hot early in the season, and they just crashed and burned. So, them scraping their knees and bumping their heads right now, that's not something that I think is anything to be overly worried about. Now, elephant in the room. The kicker. Shout out to Zach Cruz on Twitter. He came up with this one. Kickers in the NFL are 115 out of 116 on kicks under 40 yards this season. Y'all know who that one is? That's our guy. It was last weekend it was a 37 or 39 yard or something like that. You've lost. And this point, shout out to Jacob Westendorf, also on Twitter. Both great follows on Twitter if you guys are on there. Zach and Jacob, check them out. The Packers have lost to the Eagles and the Vikings. I think we can agree, 2 good teams, by a combined 7 points. And your kicker has missed kicks in both of those games. My thing here with the kicker is they were confident enough in Carlson to go into last season with him. Now, maybe they didn't have high hopes into last season. It was just sort of let's go into the season and figure out what we are, and I get that. But you were okay with him last season, and I don't think he cost you games like this. I'd have to go back and do the research. But I don't recall being directly upset with him. Not that I'm, ready to send hate mail to Narvison. He's a kicker. It's a tough job, man. Pick your head up, and I wish you the best. I'm not here to, MF you or anything like that. But blame's got to go where it's got to go, and he even acknowledged that. It's like you lost by 2 points, and he missed 2 kicks. You don't miss those kicks, you probably don't lose the game. That's what that looks like, But you do have to think about, like, what went into the evaluation of, Carlson and Joseph, and then ultimately they decided that Narvison's the guy. It's just like, I don't know. I can't. I'm not a special teams coach. I'm not a kickers coach. I never was a kicker. I don't know much about the position or any of that goes into it, except that it is a mechanical thing, right? It's a very technical thing, and it's a lot like a golf swing in that perspective. That can be kind of heady, right? There's a lot of little things you got to remember to do every time, and one thing I think that we see happen to kickers in the NFL, or probably at most levels, is the yips. And I think Mason Crosby had a little bit of that about 10 years ago when he had a really bad season and everybody wanted to get rid of him, and they hung with him. And then the next season, I think he was the best kicker in the league. Sometimes that happens. So, is this the yips for Narveson, or is the guy not a good kicker? And that's usually my question. Like, is the guy a good kicker, but he's just in his head? Because if that's the case, sticking with him can probably be the thing that gets him over it. But if that's not it, and he's just not a good kicker, or he's just not a consistent enough kicker, man, don't you have to like really cut your losses pretty quick? That would be. That's my question, and that's where I'm at with this. It's just performance based. Man, the league is 115 out of 116 on kicks under 40 yards, and you the man that missed the one. Like, that's tough. That's tough, especially you see Joseph go out playing for the Giants, and he's kicking well. That's tough. I think in Goot we have to trust, right? The front office has done so well with all the other holes that they've had to fill. And going into the offseason, you knew that the safety position had to be addressed, and boy, was it addressed. There's a lot of things that had to be done, and all of them were done. The running back position was addressed a little bit of a surprising way, but still nonetheless done. O-line was reinforced. So there's a lot of things that were done. And then, going into the regular season, okay, well, we don't like our backup quarterback situation. We're going to do something about it. And they addressed it effectively. In the past, it brings in Rasul Douglas when you need another DB. And man, did that work out or what? So I think at this point, you have to trust the front office to know what's out there, be able to evaluate it accurately, appropriately, which maybe that's what they're struggling with right now. Maybe they're not good at evaluating kickers. I'm not sure. And you got to make the decision what's best for your team. But what I think we can be confident is they're not just out here saying, all right, we got what we got, and we're going to roll with it. I think that there was a little bit of stubbornness in the Ted Thompson days where it was like, we got what we got. We're going to roll with it. And there was even times I think that McCarthy was showing frustrations about those things. I don't think that Goot is that way. He's shown, and maybe he doesn't make splashy moves, but he makes effective moves. The guys that he gets, we're usually like, I wonder who that guy is. And then we find out real quick that he can play ball. So you got to have faith in Goot. We trust in the front office. We trust that they will get this kicker situation figured out. For so many years, we were struggling with the punter situation. I finally got that figured out. So hopefully they will get through this, but that is a big concern. If you don't get this corrected and you go into the playoffs with a guy who you don't know that he can make a 30 to 40 yard field goal like 99% of the time, like, 100% of the time, right? Like, you got to make that kick every time. That's a tough thing to go in the playoffs with. But these guys, their job is on the line too. That we as Packers fans have to acknowledge that we are fortunate to have a good organization. And you can see what a bad organization looks like across the league. They make the same mistakes over and over again. There's just unexplainable things. You're like, wait, what? How did you screw that up? Over and over and over again. And so I would just say this organization isn't that, right? These guys, whether it's scouting a quarterback or whatever it is, the coaching staff, they have the training staff, even this last offseason, they want to get it right. They're not being complacent. They're not sitting down, and I'm living down here in Dallas Cowboys territory. I can tell you there's some unhappy fans down here because they've been living Groundhog Day since, 1994. And They're about sick of Jerry's ways. And there really is something to having a good organization who is focused on real success, and that's how you end up with, an organization like the Packers, where they've won championships consistently throughout their history. They've won championships, and then you got the Bears, right? They've been playing football for over 100 years, and they have yet to have a quarterback throw for 30 touchdowns in a season. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. So, we have to put it all into perspective. We have to have faith that the organization in place is built to figure out these problems. So, to the comments, to the chat, Chris N. Musgrave seems to almost be regressing. He does seem to be regressing a little bit. You wonder how much of that is scheme, how much of what he is going to be used for is dependent on Jordan Love running the offense. I think everything about the offense has to be kind of delayed a couple weeks now, right? So in order to understand whether or not this offense is going to pick up where it left off, first game of the year, you're down in Brazil. I mean, we've already talked about, there's a whole load of context that goes along with it and makes that game kind of an anomaly. Obviously, then you have the injury, the 2 weeks where it's a different plan entirely. And then you come back against a great Vikings team, seems like a really tough defense, regardless of how good the team ends up being. And, you had to know that Jordan Love has some rust to knock off, right? Like that's how it goes. Guys got to get in there. They talk about having to get that first hit. They talk about having to just sort of get in a rhythm, get back into the swing of the game. So you even had to accept that there was some of that coming from him in this game. Can't be a surprise at the very least. But now you're going on and you want to see how this game goes beyond that. That's why I'm holding out all my judgment. Like Dobbs is having kind of a disappointing season. Christian Watson has been pretty quiet this season, and obviously he's got the injury now. I am not going to have the made of glass conversation. That was a freak hit. So R, if you're out there listening, we're not admitting that Christian Watson is made of glass yet. That was a tough hit. That's a tough hit for anybody, and I think a rather fortunate diagnosis. Sounds like maybe just a week or two where it looked like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that looked bad. That looked like something that might take him out for a season. So glad that he has a chance to come back here pretty quick. And a high ankle sprain is not going to be as much of a lingerer as a hamstring and the soft tissue stuff. So when he's back, he should be back. But yeah, some of the offense has been rather disappointing. Jaden Reed on fire. You can't be disappointed by him. But the guys that have been somewhat disappointing, I reserve my my judgments, my evaluations, whatever it may be, until we see this offense firing under Jordan Love for a few games, and we see these guys get a little bit more comfortable with what they were expecting to be doing. And there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of stuff. We've talked about it that goes into that. And that introduces complexity, which you don't want to give to your backup quarterback when he's thrust in after only being here for a couple weeks. You want to reduce that complexity. So there is that. There is a little bit of a let's wait and see. But I do agree Musgrave hasn't looked great. He's made some plays. He's been here and there. But you definitely, after sort of getting a little bit of a taste of his potential and hearing about how fast he can be and all that, man, I want to see him break out. I definitely do. And I want to see this offense break out. I want to see defenses be afraid of simultaneously Christian Watson, Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Dobbs. Like, I want to see that threaten Kraft too. I mean, he actually is looking pretty good. Is this tight end one? We might have a tight end controversy on our hands, but yeah, I'd say we got to be patient with that too. That falls into the patience category of let's give this offense a chance to get back on track now that Jordan Love is back, and give him a few weeks to figure it out. But another comment from Chris in here: pass rush. Yeah, biggest concern: pass rush, linebacker, and cornerback in IMO, in my opinion. Yeah, pass rush is one. That's got to be probably number 2 to the kicker for me. The lack of pass rush is just kind of puzzling because, again, and the thing that I bring up the most is if you've seen players perform at a certain level and you're not seeing them do that now, there's a reason for that. You got to figure out what that reason is. Usually it's coaching, one way or another, scheme, or whatever it is, mentality, um, something. And this pass rush, we've seen these guys be good, and a lot of people are kind of starting to poo-poo on Rashawn Gary a little bit. It's like, no, he wasn't just hype. Like, he at one point had I think one of the best pass rush win rates in the league, something like that. But yeah, I mean, he was doing it. He was definitely performing, and some of these other guys too. So that's where I wonder how much of these first 4 games has been impacted by the Love injury and the game plan that has to happen because of that, and the need for complementary football. And then, are you taking less risks on defense than you would have otherwise, just because you need to keep games manageable, things like that. That's what I wonder. Because it just seems like they're not using weapons that they have as far as the pass rush goes, and the guys are out there, they're doing it. You see them get some penetration here. They've gotten some sacks, not like they haven't gotten any, but it definitely seems like they've been reserved in that area. So that's even one of my thoughts for this upcoming game against the Rams. Is this is a prime game for the pass rush to be featured. You've got a lesser receiver core out there because they're banged up with their top guys are banged up. So, hopefully you get Jair back, but you've got to be a little bit more comfortable with how your DBs match up with these receivers. That's the thing with the pass rush. When you ramp that up, you definitely are making a trade-off to leave your secondary more vulnerable in some way, shape, or form. When you're down your 2 of your top 3 cornerbacks going against arguably the best receivers in the league, it's just not the right day to bet on those guys, and that's not to talk bad about the guys they got, because I think Ballantyne and Stokes hung in there, and they're certainly capable cornerbacks in this league. Stokes has had a great start to the season, in my opinion. But again, it's one of those things where you sort of calculate your risk, and you just decide, like, hey, maybe today's not the day where we're going to leave our DBs on an island, because we're going to fire some pass rush missiles and give the quarterback easy hot reads to just carve our beat up secondary. That happens real quick, and when you don't have a strong pass rush, it's really easy to say, where's the pass rush? But as soon as you bring that pass rush and get carved up, it's real easy to be like, what is going on here? Like, this looks bad. So I'll chalk that one up to calculated risk, really, most of the first few games. That Eagles offense starting game 1, like, that's not an offense to mess with. I mean, you go blitzing, Hurts, he can run on you, but those are some great receivers like we saw. I mean, they've just had their work cut out for them. So I don't think they've had a great chance to just take that calculated risk of sending the pass rush and betting on your secondary against the receivers that you're going against. And I maybe saw it a little bit against Tennessee, but I think this week is a good opportunity. You've got Stafford, who's not very mobile. You've got a banged up O-line. You've got receivers that are banged up. So you should be able to match up with them well. This is a good week to send the pass rush from all different directions. We saw Quay Walker get a sack. Let's send him again. Let's see him get another sack. They've been effective with the DB blitzes when they've sent them in there. Send those in. That's what I would say watch for is this week specifically is the pass rush. I think that's a big opportunity for them. And I'd love to see them exploit it. Chris, you mentioned linebacker and corner. I'm going to say I'm going to hold back on that. Again, you just got injuries there. 2 of your top 3 guys are out. That's going to happen. I think the guys that they've got filling in, the fact that Stokes and Ballantyne are not outright liabilities, that's a good thing. It's a good place to be. There's not every team in this league loses 2 of the top 3 DBs and they're feeling okay about the guys that are stepping in. Stokes obviously is probably CB2 at this point. But yeah, Ballantyne stepping in, he's had snaps, he's played good ball before. You have to feel pretty good about
that depth, and you certainly hope for more, right? You hope that some of the younger guys are, if you had to see any of those guys fill in, that they'd be capable. But the other thing to keep in mind is the way the safeties are playing can really help these other corners a lot. When you've got Xavier McKinney and Bullard back there doing what they're doing right now and making the plays that they're making, that takes a lot of pressure off of the corners. And that will lead to maybe over reliance and making mistakes, thinking you got safety help when you don't, or you've got more safety help than you have. That's going to happen. I think those are the types of mistakes that you see this time of the season, early in the season. But again, you've got talent, you've got depth, and it doesn't look like Jair's going to be out long. Doesn't seem like. I don't know the details of the Carrington Valentine injury. This is where Tim would come in and just be like an encyclopedia. Well, actually, here's the diagnosis. He would have the facts for us, man. He's sharp on that. But I don't. So chat, help us out if you can throw in some Carrington Valentine injury update knowledge. But at the end of the day, I think you've got to be, maybe if you're comparing this part of the season to same part of last season, where you're at with your secondary just from the safety perspective alone is way better. Way better, man. And it's obviously playing out. It's in showing itself, with Xavier McKinney getting the interceptions he's getting, but Bullard making some of the plays that he's making. And I know the one that's floating around Twitter is where he comes from the backside and chases the running back down from behind. It just, man, those are fun plays to see safeties making. Those are fun ones. You're starting to think like, we haven't seen safety play like this since the Nick Collins days, and I hope it continues. So, but linebacker, that's another one. It's another one. Where are we at there? I think that there's some question marks, but that's one that I still have confidence will get cleaned up as the season goes on. And I can't claim to be some kind of expert about how Hafley runs his offense and what he is, what responsibilities he's specifically giving these linebackers. But it may just take time, and it may be like I'm saying, and I mentioned before, as you go throughout the season, you've got one more game each week of film to watch on your opponent. You got 4 weeks of film now you can watch on the Rams. So each week it's going to get a little bit better for the defense because they're going to be able to say, well, what about this? What about that? What do they do in this? What do they do in that? You're going to have examples you'll be able to look at on film, whereas early in the season you don't have as much of that. So, coupling, that and everybody deals with it, right? It's not like some other team has more film. Like they're all dealing with it. It's just ambiguity. It's a little bit more unknown. But when you have a new defensive system and a lot of young guys, rookies in several cases that you're relying on, that's what it leads to. It leads to sloppy ball, leads to miscommunications, leads to, just I thought you had it, and but you didn't. I should have had it. Just stuff like that. You get that stuff worked out. When you really have problems is when you see those things and those mistakes don't get fixed. That's the real problem. But what we got to see last season is they fix those mistakes. They don't quit. We're seeing that already. These guys still don't quit. And I think it's safe to say that they are fixing mistakes as they go. I don't think that we're seeing like a huge pattern of mistakes so far throughout this season, aside from the kicker. Get it? We already addressed that one. But even the linebackers, they haven't looked great, but they haven't. I haven't felt like there's been consistently the same mistake being made over and over again. I think that there's just guys figuring out what they need to be doing in the scheme against certain looks that they haven't gotten to see yet. So give that time. But yeah, the linebacker core, you can't say it's not a concern. It is a concern for sure. But time, I think, can heal that one. Hopefully. I'm still pretty optimistic. I'm obnoxiously optimistic. If you guys haven't picked up on that, even when we were down 28-0 in this last week in the second quarter, I tweeted out a lot of football left to play. Shout out to CD Tundra Vision at Tundra Vision. He said, "This isn't the flex people want to hear right now," and he's right. It wasn't a flex, but yeah, I my optimism definitely gets obnoxious sometimes, so I do apologize about that. But hey, man, it's more fun than being negative. Being negative is not fun. So let's get on to this Rams game, shall we? Let's get on to this Rams game. We've got a lot of reasons, I think, to be optimistic about this game and what to expect here. Let me pull up the Rams and their grades so far this season on PFF and just what they're looking like. But I know they're banged up, and I know they just lost to the Bears, which is never a good sign. But also we can sprinkle in some PFF grades on here. And again, that's always with a grain of salt, but it can give you an idea of who's played well so far this season and maybe who hasn't played as well. I'm already seeing some things on their defense that seem like guys maybe just haven't played very well. But, looking at their offense right now, you got Stafford in there, and it doesn't look like he's played very well so far. But, he's a great quarterback, no doubt about it. I wouldn't doubt his ability and his arm. I think that he will have quarterbacking ability similar to Peyton Manning, where he'll be able to get the ball where it needs to go, even when his arm's falling off, just because he's a smart quarterback and a savvy quarterback, but he's not mobile, right? So that's where he's not a tough target necessarily to track down. And it looks like the interior of the Rams offensive line is particularly vulnerable. Not very good PFF grades on those guys at this point. The tackles are okay. Havenstein's not a bad tackle. Jackson, he's okay. He's 42nd out of 78 tackles so far is his grade. So yeah, you have opportunities. If you're a good pass rusher, Rashawn Gary should be looking at this going, we got opportunities here. Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, you guys should all be looking at this like, I can win my one-on-ones. I'm going to get to that quarterback. We're going to eat in this game. But even guys like Quay and DBs, you should be able to fire some of those guys from a second level, create some, misdirection, deception, whatever it is, disguise some of these things like the Vikings are doing so well, and force Stafford to make decisions sooner than he wants to. If you can do that, it's going to be very difficult for this offense to score. Even their run game, Williams, he's not bad. He's having a pretty solid season, it looks like, but you've played some pretty darn good running backs already. This Packers team is pretty well tested at this early point in the season. And then out at receiver, you got Whittington. I'm not even sure who Whittington is. Robinson and Atwell. So yeah, you've been tested probably more than this at every position, I would say. Maybe Stafford's the best quarterback you've seen so far. But at the same time, he's struggling on what he's got to work with. So he's not as much of a threat as he probably could be. And then that Rams defense really doesn't look very strong, and I don't have their stats up here. Let's pull up some season standings here, see where they're at in some of these areas. But this looks like a team that the Packers should be able to rebound against. And I shouldn't have to say anything more than they lost to the Bears last week, right? Like, come on. If you're giving Caleb Williams his first win, then you're not doing great. But anyway, so let's pull up some of these. Let's go with defense first. Defensive leaders, see how they're looking. Passing yards per game to start with. They are second to last. They are giving up 385 yards on the ground per game right now, through the air per game right now. And then on the ground, they are, let's see here. Where are the Rams? They're in the bottom 25, 30%. They're giving up 219 yards per game on the ground right now. So yeah, this matchup, it definitely favors the Packers. If we're looking at turnovers, the Packers are leading the league in turnover differential, and the Rams looks like they're, again, that kind of bottom 25% with -1 on the turnover differential. The Packers are +6. So hefty advantage in the turnover side of things. All those things point to the Packers being able to win this game, right? There's a lot of reasons you can look at this game and go, that looks pretty good. Looks pretty good, and then if we're looking at the Rams offense passing per game, where are they at here? The Packers are at number 3, and the Rams are like right in the middle of the road. The Packers right now, 410 yards per game total offense. Rams, 312 yards per game total offense. And then the passing game, the Packers and the Rams right next to each other. So the Packers are doing 235 yards per game. Rams 224 yards per game, and then rushing, the Packers are at 174 per game, and the Rams offense is 5th from the bottom, putting up a grand total of 88 rushing yards per game. So this Rams offense, not very intimidating. This Rams defense, not very intimidating. Have they played tough opponents? Let's take a look. Lions, Cardinals, 49ers, and Bears. And funny enough, the only game they won out of those 4 is against the 49ers. So this looks a lot like a good rebound game for the Packers, and certainly not a game you want to see the Packers struggle in, I think. As long as they're healthy, you see Jordan Love getting out there again. This should be a game the Packers can go out there and control. And I see here the headline that McVay rules out Kupp against the Packers, so they will be without Kupp. I believe Nakua is down for the season. So yeah, they're in a tough spot. You feel for the Rams. That's too bad. But we're not Rams fans, and this is not a Rams podcast, so we will not lose any sleep or shed a tear over their tough season. But what we will do is throw a prediction out there. So, Tim did not give me his prediction. So, Tim, if you have tuned in, sir, throw your prediction in the chat. Would love to see it. But he did give us a few notes on this game. Rams are very beat up. No Kupp, no Nakua. O-line's a mess. Don't underestimate McVay and Stafford. Very true. McVay is a brilliant mind. Stafford's a brilliant mind. Great quarterback. And his final note is their defense has some holes. So if you suspect that I was cheating on his notes and peeking ahead of time, I wasn't. But Tim and I do think alike on a lot of these things. So, yeah, I mean, those are the points that I had covered. And like I had said before on this one for the Packers, the recipe to win here is fire the missiles, right? Send the pass rush, send these dudes, just fire. And then, let the DBs win against these lesser receivers. And then on the offensive side of the ball, get into a rhythm, right? Run the ball, stick to the run. You're doing that well. Definitely, let that lead the way and let that set that up for, the play action game and, maybe some plays over the top from the passing game. But the Packers should be able to control this game start to finish. I won't predict like a blowout win, like, 35-3, but the Packers should control this game. They may not throw up a bunch of points. This may not be just like their perfect performance, but the defense should be able to keep the Rams offense in check. The Packers should be able to put up points and get the ball moving down the field. They should be able to run the ball and keep them on schedule and ahead of the chains. So this, I think, should be a Packers win. It is, I believe, on the road, right at SoFi. Of course, Matthew got to let us know, sir. He's going to be there representing on the ground. So jumps in with his prediction. What we got here, Matthew says, calls the score, Packers 27, Rams 20. So you think it's going to be a closer game? Fair enough. I don't think it'll be a one-score game. I don't think it'll be that close. And then, they got to play the game. I didn't think the Vikings were going to be good. I didn't think the Packers were going to sign Josh Jacobs. There's a lot of things that happen that I don't think are going to happen. But in this case, a lot of these things add up to the Packers being able to control this game. So I'll say that I think it will be low-scoring game, but I think the Packers control it and then maybe put up a couple scores that pull them away. I'm going to go with like a 24-10 Packers win. So yeah, control the game on the ground, maybe shorten the game on the ground a little bit, but ultimately stay in control and win handily and move on to the next one and one step closer to NOLA. New Orleans. So that's my prediction. I don't have it to hand over to Tim. And let's see here. Chris, you didn't throw me your prediction yet, man. Last chance. But, I'll say this. I'm grateful to be a Packers fan, y'all. I am so grateful to be a Packers fan. It's an ugly loss, and it stinks to lose to the Vikings like that. I hate the Vikings. I hate the Vikings. I have a high respect for the Bears. I enjoy the rivalry with the Bears. The Vikings, I just don't like them. I don't like them at all. I know some amazing humans that are Vikings fans, and I keep praying that you guys will get smart at some point. But neither here nor there. I don't like the Vikings. So losing to the Vikings stinks. It's ugly. It's just not good. But I don't think that anybody in that locker room is okay with it. I don't think that the front office is okay with where the kicker position is. And I think that these problems are going to get fixed. And I think Hafley's defense is going to continue to get better. I certainly believe that all of these players are bought in. I think all of these players are hungry and far, 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 far from being able to quit on this one. So that said, Chris jumped in. Love it, man. He's got his prediction here. Again, predicting a little closer. 31-24 Pack win. Gotta love it. I just don't think the Rams can score that much against the Packers. I think they might get a couple scores, maybe some field goals. Maybe they're able to score some more points via field goals, but I just don't think they're going to be able to score. Right? It doesn't look like a good offense. So we'll see. But most of all, thank y'all for hanging out this week, Packer fans. Appreciate you guys every week. We enjoy the chatter. We enjoy the back and forth. We enjoy whenever rival fans jump in and give us a little banter. Most of all, we enjoy when you guys hit that like button, spike that like button for us, subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel right there. Just a couple clicks, get it done real quick. Help us out. Helps us out a lot. Doesn't cost you anything. But check us out on all the socials: YouTube, Twix, Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram. We're hanging out there. We're getting in it. We're having Packers talk every week, guys. That's what we're doing. It's the season. Tis the season to be Packer fans. So please come back and see us next week. And of course, go Pack.